The biggest thing that I see is disorganization. So everything is really scattered. Even though they might meet with each other all the time, they have no idea what the arms and the legs are doing in terms of who they're talking to, who's how far in the pipeline. And so getting organized in terms of not having things living on a desktop where nobody else can access it. So getting that data into a CRM really helps streamline it. And that's usually the first place we start, because then we can start looking at segmentation, geography, territories, and better align the messaging as we go through those campaigns.
You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm your host, Cory, and today we have with us Jennelle McGrath. She's the CEO of Market Veep, a marketing agency that specializes in inbound marketing and sales automation. Founded in 2014, Market Veep has gained recognition as a Diamond HubSpot partner and has been acknowledged as one of the best places to work. Jennelle has a rich background in entrepreneurship and marketing, having started her own business at 18 while studying business and marketing at Merrimack College. By the time she graduated in 2004, she had already built a successful company and have a solid base of clients and employees. She also hosts the Finding Business Happy podcast, where she discusses themes related to happiness in business environments. Jennelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited to get into it. And I'd love to learn more about your podcast. Maybe we kind of start there. Tell us what it's all about.
So the premise is that to have somebody live their best life inside and outside of work, and this concept that it really isn't a work-life balance, especially now that we all work, or most, right? There's more remote work.
Right.
And so this concept that life is really intertwined, and how can we make that better? So we talk to, whether it be like sales leaders, marketing, tools, and then we also have things that are just completely life related. So people who have, gone on the road and traveled with their parents and done road trips and had like those bonding experiences. Other people who've traveled and found a way to take their kids and go live abroad for, a summer and find co-working space there. So really thinking outside the box of what happiness looks like, because it seems like everybody else has, a unique definition of that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that it's funny because we saw, I think, a lot of that early on when a lot of people went remote in 2020. Maybe some people took advantage, right?
Yeah, perhaps.
Perhaps. But nonetheless, they got creative about it. And now I feel like for those of us who have worked remotely this whole time and even worked remotely before that, it's just kind of a routine thing. We're in our own spaces all day. We've kind of lost that creativity. So that's an awesome resource. Okay. Also, to help our audience get to know you a little bit better, I'd love to learn more about your career. So you've built a remarkable career over the years, helping particularly manufacturing and industrial companies modernize their sales and marketing strategies. What first prompted you to get into that niche?
I think it was by accident. It was a referral, and I just fell in love with their personalities. I think the humans in this space in particular are just such a kind, generous, collaborative group of people. It's very rare that I see in other industries where competitors are sharing ideas or going into each other's facilities and seeing behind the curtain. And they're just kind. They want to do a good job, hardworking, family businesses. It just makes you feel so nice to see them grow and expand.
That's heartening to hear, especially the competitors going in. I can't imagine that.
I know. It's wild. I'm thinking, I can't imagine that happening in healthcare, finance, all these other big spaces.
So I'm curious, you said you started with a referral, and I think, over time you get to know people, you get to know how they work, and you see this. But was there one pivotal moment where you sat back and thought to yourself, this is it? This is the space I want to continue to grow in and really invest in?
I think we started really assessing who our best fit clients are and digesting what that looked like. So looking back through all of the years, who we were able to have grow the fastest, who culturally and value-wise aligned with us. We implemented a scorecard that helps make sure that they have the infrastructure in place as well as like community giving and all of these other pieces that we found really make collaboration a lot better and easier for us. And that has helped, I think, a lot of that transition of saying like, hey, this is over and over again. This is the same group of people that is, really aligned.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And, from the outside looking in, I've worked with a few manufacturing companies in different capacities throughout my career. And I love to stay away from stereotypes and generalizations at all costs. However, I feel like I have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is a lot of people think that there are sort of outdated tactics in that space when it comes to sales and marketing. And maybe it's because they have a lot of market share already. They've already built a reputation over the years. They're known for delivering these quality products. And when you have a more, product-centric focus, sometimes the sales and marketing tactics can lag behind. So has that been your experience? Or for those of us looking in that maybe have these misconceptions, is that no longer the case?
No, it's 100% how you're describing it. I think there has been a shift of kind of this older generation who has been in it for decades, and this mentality of like boots on the ground is the only way. And this more younger crowd kind of coming in and they're learning from each other. It's an interesting overlap because I'm seeing a lot more tech adoption and acceptance. And that has, I think, evolved because of COVID when, they couldn't do trade shows anymore and they were forced to have to think outside the box, do digital, do emails. But I think the people that are getting ahead of it now, 3-5 years from now, are going to be so far ahead of the curve because, to your point, there are a lot of conversations that are just very far behind in terms of acceptance of like, this is the way that people are finding your competitors.
So what makes today, these companies should really be looking to revolutionize their efforts?
I think the best way I like to think about it is it makes their life easier, right? So the idea that you're away from your family, you're on the road. I was just at an event and I'm in New England. This person was here from Michigan. And so having these long bouts of travel are exhausting. And so there's another channel, right, that we can get leads and get the same effect and still be able to build relationships is just slightly different. And so I'm not saying that boots on the ground has to be completely cut out, but it should be more of like an omni-channel approach of let's figure out a better solution so that you don't have to do as much of that manual activity in front of people.
Yeah, I'm struck by the boots on the ground example because now sort of flipping through my mental Rolodex here, I do know a few salespeople still in, the manufacturing realm back on the East Coast. And, they are so focused on in-person, right, going and building those client relationships over and over again that their companies even will, buy them apartments in other cities.
Yes.
Yep. and to maintain that base. So have you encountered a lot of resistance to when you talk about moving away from that?
I think there's a resistance in terms of they don't want to fully remove it, which we don't want them to either. But I think it's almost like too overwhelming of like, where do I even start? Because we have no infrastructure. Sometimes they don't even have like service infrastructure. So even when the sales come in, there's no automation or tracking. And I think that's part of it. But they do eventually come around. I've learned just small steps. Like, don't try to blow up somebody's entire business model. Like, get them to adopt the one thing that's going to make their life so much easier out of the gate, and then let them work on mastering that and then add something else in. And that way they're just happier in general.
Yeah, certainly don't want to come in and rip and replace, right? That never works.
No, definitely not.
So maybe that's a good way into this. Where should businesses in the industrial manufacturing space, where should they start? What is that one big change that's going to make their lives easier?
So I think the biggest thing that I see is like disorganization. So everything is really scattered. Even though they might meet with each other all the time, they have no idea what the arms and the legs are doing in terms of who they're talking to, who's how far in the pipeline. And so getting organized in terms of not having things living on a desktop where nobody else can access it. getting that data into a CRM really helps streamline it. And that's usually the first place we start, because then we can start looking at segmentation, geography, territories, and better align the messaging as we go through those campaigns.
What are those conversations like? Because I know that even in our world, right, we will encounter some companies that are very CRM resistant still, and in industries where you think where that is a lot more common.
Yeah. It's hit or miss, in all honesty. I think there's a lot of education that goes into it, like a lot of demoing and showing examples and case studies and, really saying like, here's what it could look like, or here's how this solves this specific problem. There are definitely people, when we go to a trade show and we talk to somebody where there is no budging. There's no way. I mean, I can think of somebody, he had like 80 salespeople in multiple countries, and there was no infrastructure at all. They would just self-report. So, the thing about scaling an organization of that size without any forecast visibility is scary, right? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, I think scary is the word.
Yeah,
for sure. So trade shows have come up a few times, and I've heard you mention them in sort of good and bad lights, right? When the trade shows are going, it's great. But when we have something that disrupts a trade show, business can fall off. So where are we at in 2025 with trade show efficacy? And what do you recommend to really take the most best advantage and approach?
Go to them. I think what we've seen, though, is to use the technology before you go. So leaning into marketing campaigns where we have nurture campaigns already pre-set up. So once you come back with your list, they're automatically loaded in faster nurtures. Making sure that they have the floor planner all mapped out ahead of time. Sometimes we talk and they're just randomly walking the floor. There's been no research. Making sure that they have connected and followed all the companies that are engaging with the content on social. And then we'll see things like, we'll run ads if it's a targeted, show range where we want to really double down. We'll run ads around that, or free marketing campaigns to say visit their specific booth. So lots of ways to get in front of those people, but I prefer it not to just be like, we're going to this show and just going to show up and see what leads we get from it.
What role does booth design play in this?
I think booth design, I've seen quite a few styles at this point. I think the biggest thing is how people are engaged. So figuring out whatever that hook is going to be to get them into that booth. I think I've seen really bad booths still get a ridiculous amount of people come in, whether that be beer, coffee stations, candy bar, robots. I've seen Yeti giveaways where they were auctioned off, which looked like a stampede. So there's lots of different ways. I think the more creative you can be, the better.
Do you find that it varies a lot across audiences and company types?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about, like that open-mindedness, right? Like that acceptance of it's okay to be really creative. Because I think some of them are still kind of stuck in, we need to be formal and traditional and stay in this kind of lane that we've made. But the ones that are open-minded, I mean, the result is exponential.
It seems like it often comes back to two-pronged approach. One, know the audience. Like you said, know where you're going to go, have the floor plan in mind, know who you're going to be speaking to, and also get creative and test that as well.
Yes.
Because I've found it varies a lot from show to show, audience to audience, what that hook's going to be and how effective it'll be.
Yeah. Size of show too, right? Like if it's a really intimate event, like you can't do a Yeti giveaway with an open mic. Like it's not going to have the same effect crowdsourcing it. So for sure.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. And I want to go back and dive into that example you mentioned where there was a company that had 80 sales reps, global company, and, this was their tech stack. For our audio listeners, I'm holding up a notebook and a pen here. So when you go into an implementation like that, what are the big metrics that you set up immediately right out of the gate?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is to get all the decision makers in the room, because each department will a lot of times have clearly, obviously, different reports and dashboarding. So when we think about the CRM implementation, we need to reverse engineer those into it as we build it. I think KPI wise, the most common ones up from the marketing side, we're looking at lead volume, lead quality, looking at lead scores off of them. And then on the sales side, a lot of times we're looking at like where it's getting stuck in the pipeline, where there's resistance, and where marketing can help support push it over the line. And then we'll do things like team dashboarding or territory dashboarding so that we can get more granular and say like, hey, this territory is crushing it. Let's take a deeper dive and figure out what they're doing so that we can mirror it across the others. But the KPIs, I think, vary quite a bit across each of those. A lot of times we'll work with ops as well.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Getting everyone on the same page, trying to figure out where we have the most success, where there can be more, and get a plan together. I'm curious though, sales and marketing at the best of times. We say we're aligned and we're not. Yes, the best of friends that, have their hands around each other's neck. How does that go in a space where, from listening to you talk, the teams are very much siloed and not together?
I can think of a time when we were at a trade show and somebody came up to the booth and the owner was the first person who came in super excited, a 10 division company. They kept buying all of them and they were trying to organize them into one. And so really excited, couldn't wait to, get into it. He said, okay, I'm going to bring over my business partner. The business partner has completely different, finance guy. Third guy comes and he is the sales guy. And the sales guy was so against, to your point, the marketing capabilities and wasn't able to visualize like, how is this going to actually change what he's doing? He was really just looking at it as like, this is going to disrupt my process. And so I hear you. I think it's sad when I see it because there's such a huge opportunity and it's not supposed to be everybody fighting against each other. I've seen awesome teams where like their sales and marketing alignment meetings, the sales reps they have so much transparency where they'll say, hey, this lead was awesome. This is the messaging, or here's my call transcripts so that you can take that messaging, or this call didn't go well. Can we figure out like where the lead quality is going off so that we can get it back on track? But I think you have to have that level of vulnerability as a team to be able to have those conversations. And some people just aren't ready to get there yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's something that we do internally, all jokes aside, right? Like we're all looking at the quality of leads, discussing the leads that come in, reviewing call recordings and messaging and tweaking back and forth. Do you
doesn't
find...
help any...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
As I say, it doesn't help anybody, right? If everybody's just finger pointing, you stay treading water. It's just better to be honest about it.
Yeah, no, that's completely right. Especially, and to your point, it requires a level of vulnerability. I wonder when you go from companies that have no CRM to then setting up CRM and having, team pages, but also shared reporting, right? Reporting that rolls up to a higher level. Maybe it's the CRO, or maybe it's getting the head of sales and marketing in a room together to look at these things. Does that impact the conversations and the collaboration moving forward?
It does. I think one of the big things that we've seen is, they're used to your point, doing it on paper and being able to self-report. I remember one time there was a rep and we said, can you show us, your leads? And he emailed literally 5 names without emails, where they came from, just 5 names. And that was his leads list. And so, just a different mentality and approach for sure. I think, to your point for the transparency and the reporting, I think sometimes there's a hiccup in this piece of like they feel attacked, like, hey, I have to now answer all of these questions, when in actuality, we can use that data automatically without disrupting any of their process and change the messaging to make things better. And I think once they get there, they get really bought in and really excited. And it's not just about like, did I hit my number? It's like, how can we get more of these really good leads?
That's such an important mindset shift to bring up. I'm really glad you did, because a lot of tech, and not just CRM, right? But a lot of sales tech, let's face it, it was built for management, right? It's built for forecast accuracy. It's built for activity metrics. Yep. Right. We want to know what you're doing. We want to know who you're talking to. We want to know that you're at least working proactively toward your number. So right off the bat, when CRM is going in, how do you facilitate that mindset shift where you say, no, this is actually going to help you. This is going to be something of value to you. It's not just another box checking thing you have to throw into your workflows that are already overloaded.
From the individual sales rep, the way that we look at it is they can so we're a HubSpot partner. So everybody we work with is on HubSpot, but we look at it as like, do they prefer to work within the CRM and like adopt it, or is their workflow living in their inbox? And so we don't try to change their process. It's just meet them where they're at. So if it's email, we'll connect it in. And then from the marketing side, we get all the data we need and they can continue on. And then they get excited when they start seeing like, oh, I can put templates in here and I don't have to type the same email 50 times a day, or I can enroll this person who ghosted me into a nurture campaign and then with my booking link and I don't have to keep following up. So small wins of making things better, but again, not all at once. We want them to like fall in love with it and adopt it and really use it.
It makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about just the daily workflows. That's something that we're constantly focused on is how is this tech going to actually make someone's day life easier and offload those tasks that they have found burdensome since 1972. Right? Like, let's focus on them. If we want them to use the tech, let's give them something that's going to help them.
I mean, we'll see enterprise clients come in and it's just like the leadership is like, blow it all up. Let's switch like 7 platforms at once. And we were like, we cannot help you. We can do it. But like, that is a horrible idea. And your team will be so unhappy and you'll be unhappy because it's so disruptive. So one at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. It requires a change management approach. It's never a good idea to throw too much at people. Okay. So let's go back. I want to learn more about your business and your journey. So you started this company, your first company in 2004, right? And then fast forward to 2022, when you had a pretty impressive revenue increase, 79% over 2 years, which landed you on the Inc. 5000 regionals list. So what was that like? Kind of walk us through.
So we have been on the Inc. regionals and then we've been on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing for the last 2 years as well. So it's been really a journey. I think the biggest shift that we did was really focusing on people and value alignment. So value alignment in who we get for clients, that they understand process and have this open-mindedness. And then on the flip side, really fine-tuning our values for culture fit on internal. Because when both are, if you have 2 completely different personalities trying to move in the same direction, it can work, but it's just a little bit more of an uphill battle. And so we really focused on fine-tuning that over those last couple of years.
And I'm always curious when I talk to CEOs and they mention culture and culture fit. When you started to look at culture, was it something that you proactively created from the very beginning? Or was it something that you saw it starting to form and then you said, no, I want to take it in X direction? So
my first business I had for like 15 years and I was so unhappy. I got to that 15-year mark and I was like, I have to do something else with my life. And so I really just went into consulting and marketing and helping people. And that was really the game shift. I was sure that it was employees who were making me miserable. And that was the reason. And there was this mind shift as I grew that consultancy that I needed to hire. I needed help, right? But I was so adamant about if I hire somebody, I do not want to lose focus on what happiness looks like. Hence why finding business happy has become so important. Because it really does. It changes our perspective if we look at what happiness is and then shift all of our decisions around, is this going to change my trajectory? Is it going to change my company culture? Is it going to attract the wrong clients? Is it going to grow us too fast? Is it going to grow us too slow? All of those pieces kind of come together in a big puzzle. You don't have to answer this if it's prying too much, so please let me know. However, I'm deeply intrigued by, you said you started this business, had it for 15 years, and then you had this moment where you hit a wall and were just like, no, I'm not happy doing this. Something has to change. Would you be willing to share sort of what that revelation was and what was behind it? Yeah. So I had a fitness business and it was really transient. So we would go into schools and onto campuses and run massive boot camps with like hundreds of people in them, or we would go into homes and, train people in their personal gyms or go into their apartment complexes or meet them in a park. And it just was a very transient model. At that point, I didn't understand company culture. I didn't understand the importance of having the hiring for values. I was like, are you skilled? Do you have the certifications that we need? And, as time went on, things like, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, the answering service would, call and say, this person is calling out to a boot camp that has 200 people at it. And so that stress of that weight and just never being able to really be off at any point because you didn't know what they were going to do. And so that's why I really just felt like it had to be the people, but it was just value alignment, business type. And I think it took me a long time to get there, right? Like it wasn't like I hit the 15-year mark and I was like, okay, this is it. Like it was like a child, right? Like it'd been with me for so long. It felt like I was giving up on this thing, but I was just so unhappy. Once I switched, I was perfectly fine, but that's why we focus so much on it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's an important lesson for a lot of entrepreneurs to hear, right? It's not only about the technical skills you're hiring for, because at the end of the day, right, when things get hard, there's always going to be another shoe that can drop when you're not really aligned on what the value is to your employees and the value that you're trying to deliver to others. So I'm curious, when you started the new business and you talked about hiring more for this value fit, this value alignment, and now fast forward to today, what are the qualities that you look for? Or is there a certain set of questions that you always go into that first interview with?
We have a lot of silly questions, and they've definitely evolved over time. But one of my favorites is, what is the last kind thing somebody has done for you? And then on the flip side, what is the last kind thing that you've done for somebody else? And the insight is not that it has to be this massive grand gesture. I actually love when they say the small things because it shows that they have gratitude and have appreciation and can be self-reflective of somebody else's moment of need or whatnot, or that it doesn't always have to be a big celebration as the action.
I love that. That's a great one. And another business question for you. I know that you mentioned earlier on about balancing growth. And this is something that can be kind of polarizing. There are a lot of companies that go for growth at all cost. And then there are a lot of companies that take a hard look at things and will even turn away customers. So no, we might get the quick win, the quick sale today. However, we know 6-9 months down the line that this customer is going to churn.
Yeah.
They're just not a good fit for us. So how do you recommend that people balance that short-term growth and the long-term, more strategic investments?
So we've been on both sides of that spectrum for sure in our growth journey. I think that when you first start out, right, you are more open to taking whoever comes through, and the bigger that you get and the more choice that you have, I've definitely seen companies where they have choice and they still choose to work with those people, which is a whole other conversation. But for us, I think we use a scorecard, and that was a significant insight, because before it was just you were going on gut and feeling if this was going to be a fit. And this is very much, these are the important things in order to collaborate, to work together, and it gives a number. And we know that between these numbers, they're open-minded enough and willing to do these things. And otherwise, we're just setting ourselves up for the long run to not be aligned. And if you're going to end up in drama in 9 months, why even bother starting and just focus your energy on finding a better fit person at that point?
I love that answer. And like a lot of great advice, I think it sounds easy and the wheels are turning in the back of my brain. Like, it's got to be really hard to implement. I mean, I know that, sure, we can have all the objective criteria there for scoring an opportunity that comes in. And there are still, sales managers out there who sit down with a top performer and that top performer is saying, I have a really good feeling about this because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And that
The
still
gut.
ends up in the forecast, right? How did you develop this process?
So we use something called Score app, and it is very definitive of, we put in the question. So have you had a 20% year over year growth rate? What is your average revenue range? Do you have somebody who can answer in a timely manner within 24 hours approvals? Do you have a CRM? Do you have a sales team? Do you have sales process? And so really reverse engineering all of those stucks that made things not work and just flat out ask people. And it's interesting when they answer, because then in the sales process, I'll go back and we'll openly talk about it. We'll pull up the results and say, this is what you scored, but let's get into why. Because sometimes they might not understand it either. Like they might be open-minded to doing some of the things, but they're just...
That's a big difference. Again, open-mindedness, willingness, it makes a lot of difference. Okay. So as we head toward the end of the podcast, there are 2 questions that we ask every guest. And the first one is, we're recording this in March of 2025. So I want you to think 5 years out. And we'll specifically dig into manufacturing, the industrial sector here. What is a big shift coming in 2030 that a lot of people don't see coming right now?
I think, the elephant in the room, I think the AI component. First piece is technology acceptance, but I think the bigger thing is like AI is here. It's not going anywhere, and get on the train of the technology, at least the core function, and work towards, learning those other pieces. But to just ignore it, I think will be a really big mistake in the long run.
Completely agree. I think we're past that. Okay. And final question. If you could go back in time 5, 10, 15 years and give career advice to your younger self, what would it be and why?
I think have grace with yourself. I think there's so many different things that happen. And when you're growing and you are just starting out, you don't know everything. And you really end up, I think, for me, I beat myself up a lot. But as time went on, you get surrounded by other people in the space or hear other stories where you can really relate to people. And I wish I had had that infrastructure and support system back then, but give yourself the grace to be like, you can't know everything all the time, and surround yourself by people who really are knowledgeable.
I think that's fantastic advice, especially nowadays, right? Where everyone's professional profile, the face we're putting out into the marketplace, LinkedIn, everything is so polished.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly easy for people just starting out to take a look and think that there's no failure behind the successes listed on the resume.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that our team has done a really good job at. Like, we have failed a lot, like, in all honesty. And, you asked about the Inc. 5000. I think we've gotten very good at identifying something and then trying to fix it fast, as opposed to letting things fester for a long time. It just makes everything a little easier.
Yeah, it certainly does. Okay, so if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
They can find me on LinkedIn at Jennelle McGrath. They can find us at marketveep.com, or they can listen into our podcast, Finding Business Happy.
Sounds good. Well, Jennelle, thanks so much for joining us on the show. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.